And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on an early Sunday morning edition of the Upside Sports Network. We're going to discuss the Major League Baseball's trade deadline. We saw a big trade yesterday with Max Scherzer going to the Texas Rangers. Today is going to be one of the bigger days here at the trade deadline because you're going to see a lot of the bigger names move if they're going to be moved at all. talking about guys like Justin Verlander, Dylan Cease, players of that ilk. Today is the day those types of trades are going to happen. Those types of trades are organizational, franchise-changing trades that have to take some time to be able to get done, and so we'll see if some of those types of trades get done today. Also, the St. Louis Cardinals have been kind of playing hardball with the rest of the league, and it sounds like things might finally be opening up. A little bit of movement on the Jordan Montgomery market, reported by Mark Feinsand. Jordan Hicks market has certainly moved since Friday, and I think with the Cardinals finally could start to sell today. But if you're new here to the Upside, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. We do really appreciate the support we've gained. Follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN and on Facebook at Upside Sports Network. James, welcome back. Been a minute since I've seen you in the chat. How many Mets request a trade now that Scherzer is gone? I would expect a fair amount of trade possibilities coming from the Mets now that they've clearly decided to be a seller here at the deadline. Honestly, it's the right baseball move. That's the right thing Steve Cohen should have done. Good on him for willing to use his money to be able to bring in some prospects. That's something other organizations do not have the flexibility to do. You look at what the unique position the Mets are in, their farm system really wasn't all that great. They really buy a top 50, top 100 prospect here with the addition of Luis Angel Acuna. Plus, that gets them some upper end talent at the front end of the organization that they can call up here within the next year or two. Not sure if Acuna will break into the big leagues this year. I don't think he will, but maybe by June next year you could see Acuna in the big leagues. Brings a lot of speed to the team. Very similar player to his brother. You can actually read some of the comments that his brother had to say about him in Evan Grant's piece that he posted a couple months back. He just reposted that on Twitter this morning. So if you guys want to check out, if you're a New York Mets fan, about what you're actually getting in the younger Acuna brother anyway, feel free to check that one out as well. But as I said, we're going to see some major trades here today, if at all. Today is the day those types of trades are going to happen. Deadline day is usually reserved, for rentals, last-minute trade options, back into the bullpen type players, back-end starters, that kind of thing. So if you're going to see a Verlander trade, today is probably going to be the day for it. If you're going to see some, bigger names moved, today is likely the day those names ultimately get moved. So as to answer your question, how many Mets request a trade? I think you're going to see the rental pieces, Canna, Pham, players like that. They're likely going to be out the door with the Mets. Verlander, I think, very likely will request a trade as well. As for where he could go, it sounds like the Astros are unlikely at this point. I told you guys that was unlikely a few days ago, but that reporting has now been verified by Bob Nightingale. Just the way the things ended with Verlander and the Houston Astros organization, the comments that the owner, Jim Crane, said about him. Not to say that it's completely unmendable, but I think Verlander would just prefer to go elsewhere, especially with the additions the Rangers are expected to make here at the deadline. It's going to be a dogfight anyway in the AL West to see ultimately who stays on top. The Rangers are going to be without Jonah Heim the rest of the year, it sounds like, but at least 2 to 3 weeks at the moment. But it's going to be a pain management thing. I'm not expecting him to come back, though, at this point. Sounds like they're going to roll with a catching tandem of Mitch Garver and Sam Huff behind the plate in Texas. I'm curious to see, with the St. Louis Cardinals being sellers and the Contreras contract not working out, if we could see a catching trade for a guy like Wilson Contreras. We'll kind of dig into some possibilities here with the Cardinals. As I mentioned, they're going to be the big sellers here today. The White Sox have already traded a number of their pieces. I think the Mets are going to trade a number of their pieces today. The Rockies have some pieces that they could move, some bullpen pieces, smaller, platoon-type players that they could move. But we're going to see a lot of trades today, tomorrow, and Tuesday. Are we going to see the types of trades like Nolan Arenado type trades, pieces like that? Probably not. I think the one player that has an outside chance of being traded that nobody's talked about yet is Pete Alonso. Nobody's really mentioned him. He's having a little bit of a down year. He's hit 30 home runs, though, in a down year. His batting average on balls in play is below 200, which I think shows you there's some room for positive regression, meaning he's going to get better as the season goes on. But the Mets are not going to be in contention this year. Next year, of course, they could retool, but he's going to be in the final year of a deal at that point. If Steve Cohen really wants to rebuild this team quickly and get a top 25 prospect in the game, I think this is one trade possibility that they could do. They could package Verlander and Pete Alonso, make a really strong, two-way type package here, really improve your lineup and your pitching rotation. Eat pretty much most of that money for Verlander's contract, and you could buy yourself a top 25 prospect that away. That'd be one really quick way to rebuild your organization. Sure, it would cost money, but Steve Cohen's been throwing money around like it's going out of style. I'll put it that way. And if the Mets decide to really go all in as far as the tear down of this season and rebuild next season, Pete Alonso may in fact request a trade just because he doesn't want to stick around for just how bad things are going to get in the second half. Now, they of course still have Lindor. They have some aging money on their roster right now and guys like Marte. But I'm curious with the trade of Max Scherzer, how does this affect guys like Pete Alonso, players like that on the team? I don't think Kodai Senga is going to go anywhere. He, of course, just signed with the major league team for the first time in his career. I think you're going to build your rotation around Senga next year. Verlander, I expect to be out the door. A lot of bullpen going out the door as well. Rayleigh, Ottavino, I could see going elsewhere. I could even see them discussing a guy like Edwin Diaz to the right team. They may have to eat some money, but if they really want to get some high-end prospects back, the Mets are in a very unique position more than any other team that we've seen in baseball history, where they could literally buy whatever prospect they want to go with. It's just a matter of what exactly do they ultimately want to spend, and how willing are they to take on that money in order to acquire those prospects. So as I said, they're going to be in a very unique position. So let's kind of dig into some possibilities that are out there. Get this screen popped up for you guys. There we go. Angels had all that momentum coming into the weekend. Haven't mentioned them yet anyway. But they lost a couple now to the Toronto Blue Jays. Their manager was suspended for yesterday's game. Now they're going to be without Taylor Ward. They are expected to make at least one addition to their lineup. The rumors were around Jeimer Candelario. We'll see if they ultimately go that direction. But they do have like 4 third basemen on their roster. I wonder if they go that route or if they now go for an outfield first base type. Now with the Ward injury, we shall see. Big news, of course, was the Rangers acquiring Max Scherzer. After the acquisition, I thought they were going to go after some bullpen pieces and maybe a lineup addition. Well, according to Nightingale and Feinstein, it sounds like they're going to be looking for a starting pitcher as well as a couple of bullpen arms. Now, bullpen, not surprising there, obviously, but the surprising part is they're going to continue to add to that starting rotation. I wonder with their connections to the St. Louis Cardinals if they expand a trade package for Jordan Hicks to include a guy like Jordan Montgomery. That seems to be the guy that's making some headlines as far as the next name that could possibly move on the starting pitching market. Verlander as well. But, if the Rangers decide, hey, we want to go ahead and get Jordan Hicks, add to our bullpen, and finish up this rotation reconfiguration, if you will, Jordan Montgomery would be a low-cost option that might solve their issues. And remember, the trade that brought him to the St. Louis Cardinals last year from the New York Yankees, the Yankees used him very differently than the Cardinals did last year. Montgomery pitched very well in the second half of the season last year for the St. Louis Cardinals. The pitching coach at the time was Mike Maddox, who helped unlock that in Jordan Montgomery. So maybe teaming up with him once again would work very well in their favor. The Rangers have done things like this before, trying to partner manager or pitching coach with a player at the trade deadline here. You saw that with Aroldis Chapman. Bruce Bochy really was an advocate for Aroldis Chapman, bringing him in. Max Scherzer, I'm sure, had an advocate in Mike Maddox before, where he won 2 Cy Youngs with him as his pitching coach in Washington. Maybe we could see something similar here with Jordan Montgomery. So Rangers sounds like they're going to add at least one starting pitcher ahead of the trade deadline and a couple of relievers. Jordan Hicks probably the most likely at this point for that Rangers bullpen. But there's a ton of relief arms that are out there. David Bednar's been discussed among Rangers executives of the last couple of weeks. There seems like they're really going all in right now. Outside executives get the impression that they're also going all in right now. Welcome in, Sarah. We'll discuss your Cardinals pretty in depth here during this live. They're expected to make some trades here today. Sounds like they might finally be opening up the trade vaults. But the Rangers are a good team. They just need to get some. I think they're one piece away as far as a lineup piece, but I think they're going to add the rotation or the bullpen pieces that absolutely need to happen in order to make this team a legitimate threat for the postseason. The addition of Scherzer is a great step in the right direction, but I think there's more work to do for the Texas Rangers. Welcome in, Willard. But Houston could draw, or could the Mets Drew Gilbert and Hunter Brown for Verlander and Pete Alonso. I don't think for Hunter Brown. Drew Gilbert, absolutely, but I don't think you'd be able to get Pete Alonso for it. And I think Hunter Brown is too rich for that package by himself. So Drew Gilbert, sure. But the question is going to be about whether or not Verlander is willing to go to the Astros again. Again, that's going to have to require a conversation between management and front office. Yeah, we thought we'd do an early stream for you guys, Jordan. Appreciate you for joining us early here. There's going to be a lot of trade activity today, so we thought we'd kind of reset the market for what things look like heading into Sunday, and then hopefully this afternoon we see a lot of trades, and probably make a few videos for you guys when those trades break, and then again we'll be live for you guys again this evening around 8:30. So, Sarah, I mentioned that we were going to get into your Cardinals, so let's get into them. First and foremost, we've mentioned a lot about the options that they have to trade. Jack Flaherty, Jordan Montgomery from that starting rotation, maybe even to a certain extent Miles Michaelis. That bullpen, they got a number of options back there. The most likely to go at this point, probably Jordan Hicks. And then they got outfielders galore that they could trade. Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson. If you want a big-time bat, they got guys like Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. I don't think those two are likely to move. I'd probably put their chances at moving for Arenado at 1% right now, Goldschmidt around 5%. But I don't expect either of them to move. But for the Cardinals, it sounds like the first trade that they could be making would be a Jordan Hicks and Jordan Montgomery kind of a stack there. It sounds like the Rangers could be in on both. Mark Feinsand saying as much that they are interested in some starting pitching. We'll see what kind of package could ultimately end up coming back to the Cardinals. In fact, let's kind of go into that type of a trade right now. Cardinals, I expect to probably be the first trade of the day here today, so let's kind of see what they could get. Let's go ahead and do the Cardinals package here let's go ahead and, the Rangers have been most connected as of late anyway with Jordan Hicks. Now, I mentioned that Contreras could be an interesting fit for the Rangers. We'll get into that here in just a moment. But let's just go over, the Major League roster here. Let me flip over. There we go. All right, so there's Jordan Hicks and Montgomery. Trade value there, we're looking at 9.8. You're not going to get a prospect like Acuna here, but I could see you getting somebody in the neighborhood of like a Jack Leiter type of value. So let's kind of dig in. Where could they get the value here? Jack Leiter's value right now at around 9.5. The Cardinals do need some starting pitching. That would be a good option for them. I'm not sure if it's the perfect fit, though. Let's go ahead and throw Leiter in here. And then we're going to throw Rodriguez to give him somebody who can actually be on the team right now. So let's look at this package right here. This is kind of a good baseline for a trade package between the Cardinals and Rangers. Montgomery, the starting pitcher, expiring deal, same thing with Hicks. Rangers add to their bullpen and starting rotation. Meanwhile, they give up a former number 2 overall pick in Jack Leiter. They get a kind of an older prospect here in Yuri Rodriguez, who's on the Major League team right now. Kind of fills in that rotation spot for the rest of the year for Montgomery, see if they can catch lightning in a bottle and see if he can really capture some of that former promise. But a couple of prospects that are fading right now in the Major League or on the Rangers roster, but still have enough value to where I think they could get something decent value back here in return. Not a bad trade overall. If I'm the Cardinals, I'd probably want somebody who's on the upside of their prospect status rather than on the downslope. But the Rangers might want to sell right now before Leiter's value goes lower, or if they just want to hold on to him, see if he can get that fastball command back, then they'd really have something going for him. The real problem with Jack Leiter right now is that fastball command. If he can get that back, you're still talking about a guy who could move very quickly within the minor league ranks and could be a top 1 or 2 in any starting rotation if he's able to get that command back. But that's been the problem since he's joined the Rangers after the draft. I thought the Rangers I would have done it a little bit differently as far as how they used him last year. I thought they said, hey, we drafted him, we're going to go ahead and shut him down. I would have just said, hey, let's get him into the clubhouse, be around the team, we'll space out his starts, we'll let him pitch every, 2 weeks as opposed to every, 5 days, something like that. I thought that type of development would have been better for Jack Leiter. But hindsight is 2020. Things didn't work out quite as well. He had thrown more innings than he ever had in his career up to that point. Vanderbilt had used him pretty hard to try to win the College World Series, etc. But I think the Cardinals still get a high-quality piece back here in Jack Leiter, who, as I said, if he's able to establish that fastball once again, he's probably going to be ticketed for a 1-2, maybe even a 3-spot in a rotation at worst, if he's able to get that fastball command back. If he's not able to get it back, hey, you risked it. You got a high-quality, prospect back in return here for a couple of expiring deals. You got a chance at a future ace possibly in your rotation. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. All it costs you is a couple of expiring deals here. But a good chance, a good gamble here for the Cardinals to take, in my opinion. As for Pete Alonso, Willard, we mentioned him a moment ago. He could possibly be the biggest bat available here at the deadline if he decides to request a trade. Now, the Mets are in full teardown mode for this season. I expect they're going to try to be right back in contention next year. So the question is, does Pete Alonso say, hey, I'm not willing to be on this roller coaster ride of the New York Mets, and I want to go to a more consistent franchise, somebody who's willing to stick with things. Maybe he gets moved here at the deadline, packaged with a guy like Justin Verlander in order for the Mets to get a top 25 type prospect back. Just in terms of, the Rangers here, the Rangers just did this to try to, get the Mets to eat some money. They gave up a top prospect in order to get the Mets to eat $36 million of that contract for Max Scherzer. So let's see what they could do here. I see you there. Jordan, we'll get into your Jays here in just a moment. But looking at the Mets, let's do the Rangers again, just because they have the top 25 prospect I'm referring to specifically. Not saying I would do this, but this would be an interesting trade if I'm the Rangers front office. I add to my starting rotation as opposed to getting Jordan Montgomery, and I get Justin Verlander. I turn it around and, of course, add Pete Alonso to it. Where is he? There he is. So Alonso's got, 17-ish million on the books for next year, probably 10-ish plus this year. Verlander's got 43 next year. So you're going to have to include money. Let's say they include 45. Let's go ahead and say they include $50 million going to the Rangers. That'd mean $86 million they're eating to be able to get the top couple of prospects from the Rangers system. They're going to have to give up a pretty penny, the Rangers would, in order to get this type of package back, to get them to eat that much money. The question is, would the Rangers be willing to do it for a guy like Evan Carter? Now, for me, I probably would do it for a lesser prospect. Carter is one of the few untouchables, I believe, in the Rangers organization. But if you're the Mets, maybe you pound the table and say, hey, if you're going to want me to eat this type of money, I want your top prospect, period. Could the Rangers do better as far as a trade for Evan Carter? I believe so. But this is a type of trade where something interesting, something like this, could really shake up things here as we get closer towards the postseason. Maybe this would put the Rangers over the top offensively and in that rotation to get both of those pieces in that starting rotation with Scherzer and Verlander still holding on to Eovaldi. Then you still have Gray, Perez, Heaney, etc. You could put a couple of guys in the bullpen. Dunning is still there. You really kind of solve your long relief options in the bullpen, which really haven't been the same since the Jacob deGrom injury, having to force Dane Dunning back into the starting rotation. He was good for about 6 starts, but hasn't been good for the last 6. But this would be a great trade, I believe, for the Rangers as far as this season. For the future, that's the issue. You could recoup some of the value, I suppose, on the other half of this. Say if this trade doesn't work out, you get to the postseason, but you don't win the World Series. After the season, you're literally got Verlander for literally nothing. You could turn around and trade him after the season to get some prospects back, but you're not going to get somebody like Evan Carter. But, this is just one possibility. As I mentioned, Pete Alonso could very well be the best offensive bat available here at the deadline. He's had a terrible year as far as batting average balls in play is, I believe, 195 right now. There is some positive regression expected for him. He's starting to knock the cover off the ball over the last week, hitting over 300, I believe, over the last week, and could be a guy that's could send a team over the top offensively. As far as projections for the Jays, I'm not expecting a major trade for them. Bullpen, I think, is probably every team's need here. There is some rumors about Paul Sewald being available for the or for the Seattle Mariners. I think he could be had for a decent prospect package. I think the Mariners have to be a little bit overwhelmed more than, say, a guy like Jordan Hicks for the Cardinals in order to get that type of move done. But he's got a year of control left after this, so we could see him moved here at the deadline. I don't think he gets moved today. I don't think the market's quite developed for him yet. I think Hicks is going to have to go first, and then you're going to have to see if the Padres decide to move Hader, if the Pirates are willing to move Bednar. Then you get to guys like Sewald, etc., that could move next. Burleson, a possibility for the Cardinals to move. I think there has been some movement on him as well. I'm not sure if he gets moved in a major type of a deal, but there could be some discussions around Burleson that actually come to fruition. Teams are calling, checking on his availability. Good morning. Any news on the Phillies? Warren, I'm not sure if you're going to see anything outside of maybe a corner bat and maybe a reliever. It sounds like they're checking in on pretty much most of the corner outfield bats. They've checked in on Bellinger. They've checked in on O'Neill. I don't think you're going to see a major type of a move, though. I don't think you're going to see an interdivision move, of course, for like Pete Alonso for a first baseman, anything like that. But corner outfield, I think, is where you're going to see something move probably in the next 24 to 48 hours for them. I think the market's still a little bit held up anyway by the Cody Bellinger aspect of this. Do the Cubs decide to sell or buy or just stand pat? I think that right now the Cubs, at the very least, will not sell here at the deadline, so Bellinger might be holding up the market until the Cubs formally say, hey, we're going to hold on to Cody Bellinger. Same with the Astros, please. For the Astros, I think they're waiting on a starting pitcher more than anything else. I think they're waiting for, the Jordan Montgomery thing to kind of shake out. They could be one of the teams that ultimately gets Jordan Montgomery. Verlander sounds like is unlikely to go to Houston, but I think there's still an outside chance he goes there because of his familiarity with the organization. And I don't think it's inconceivable for Jim Crane to say, hey, my bad for my decision to go ahead and let you go and not pay you more than $25 million this offseason. We ruined a good thing. My apologies, mea culpa, all those kinds of things. And then we could see Verlander go back to a team like the Houston Astros. Now, the Dodgers are expected to be the favorite. They have already added Lance Lynn, though. I'm wondering just how much of an appetite the Dodgers have to add another starting pitcher, let alone the salary, the prospects they'd have to send back the other way. I think there's an outside chance he goes to one of these wild card upstart teams if Verlander's willing to go there. I think it's unlikely, but I think there's a chance. You're talking about teams like the Giants who've been connected to Verlander already. The Diamondbacks are needing starting pitching. The Reds need some starting pitching. The Angels seem to be all in right now on the Shohei Ohtani thing. I don't think they have the prospects left to be able to get the Mets to eat a lot of that money on that Verlander deal, and it might hurt their chances to be able to re-sign Ohtani because they'd give Verlander money. But I think that might be the best rotation option out there for the Angels if they decide to go that route. The Twins have had a good rotation all year. Maybe they could use a horse like Verlander to frontline that rotation going into a game one of a playoff series. There's a lot of opportunity out there for Verlander to move. As for the Astros, I think they're going to add some starting pitching. I'm just not sure Verlander is the guy that ultimately goes there. We could see Mike Clevenger moved from the Chicago White Sox. The Giants could both buy and sell from their starting rotation. Say they add Verlander, turn around and sell pieces like Manaea, Stripling, pieces like that. Wood's been working out of the bullpen a little bit lately. He could be a deadline addition. The Tigers have a couple of starting pitchers, Eduardo Rodriguez, Michael Lorenzen, that are expected to move here at the deadline. Adam Duvall of the Boston Red Sox is a hitter that's expected to move. However, there's also been some talk about James Paxton being available on the trade market as well. Red Sox are finally starting to get healthy with Trevor Story coming back here in the next week or so. Kike Hernandez was already dealt to kind of free up some roster spots. So the Red Sox could do some interesting things here at the deadline. And then nobody knows what the Brewers are going to do. Are they going to try to recoup as much value for Corbin Burnes right now, cash him in like they did Hader, and still try to stay competitive? Do they try to just piecemeal it around the edges around this organization and just hope they can make one serious run in the postseason this year with Corbin Burnes and then sell him this offseason? Remains to be seen. But the Brewers, nobody really knows what direction they're going to take here at the deadline. The reason why I talk about the Brewers so much is because they're in an interesting situation for what they're going to do with Burnes, Woodruff, and Adames, because they've already committed the money to Yelich. I was looking at the money left on Yelich's deal. He's got a full no trade, $26 million per year for like the next 5-6 years. That's a very cumbersome contract, and while he's having a decent year, a resurgent year this year, now's the time to try to trade it and eat a little bit of that money, and if you're going to do it at all, and then try to re-sign those guys, that are free agents for you in a year and a half. If you're unable to move the Yelich money, you're not going to be able to re-sign all three of those guys, which is why one of them, maybe even two of them, have to be traded and recoup some of their value, because you're not going to be able to, sign free agents with the loss of Burns or Woodruff. You're going to have to try to recoup that value before they hit the open market. So we'll see what ultimately happens with the Brewers. I'm curious to see what direction they take. Do they decide to hold on one last time for a pennant race, or do they go ahead and trade him now at the deadline and try to do what they did last year with Josh Hader? What if Houston offered Pedro Leon, Drew Gilbert for Verlander and Alonso? Possible, but I don't think Houston would do it, because I don't think the Mets would retain that much money for that type of a package. I think at that point that the money aspect of it would be too cumbersome for Jim Crane to be able to say yes to that. But it's a good start of a package, but I think you'd have to include a little bit more. I think Baez would have to be in there. You have to talk about possibly including another starting pitcher like France in that trade, or Urquidy, maybe another piece on top of that if Urquidy's the guy over France. But not a bad starting point, but I think that type of a package would be too low for the Mets to offer money, which in turn makes the Astros say no to that package as well. But let's do another trade here. Let's kind of clear off the decks here. We've done a couple of the Rangers. Let's look at, we'll do a two-team trade still. Let's do, let's do a Pirates trade. They've only done a little bit of selling so far. They've traded Carlos Santana. Let's say, they're overwhelmed for, a guy like David Bednar, who got the save last night in the for the Pirates. I'm curious to see, what they decide to do with their bullpen, just because I think they need some starting pitching, not bullpen pieces right now, so they could capitalize on Bednar's value in a weak closing market right now. Put the top guy out there if Hader isn't going to be sold here at the deadline, because I don't think the Padres at this moment will sell unless they lose today and tomorrow. And even then, I think they still might stand pat. So Bednar might be the best closer type pitcher available here at the deadline. They could get a pretty penny for him. So teams that need some bullpen help. Let's go ahead and look at the Dodgers. They seem to be another team that's pretty much all in on this year's market. Let's go ahead and add Bednar to the trade. He's got a value around 30 and change. They've dropped him to 26. Wow. I thought he'd be even higher right now. The other day he was up to about 30. Welcome in, Timothy. Welcome in, Bucks fan. What would it take for the Rangers to acquire Hicks from the Cardinals? Not a whole lot. You're probably talking about a top 15, top 20 prospect as the headliner in that package, and then maybe another prospect in that 25 to 30 range to round out the trade. What about the Rays? I think they could be another fit for a relief arm like a Bednar, but I think they're looking to kind of do some different things that other teams are looking at here at the deadline. I think they're looking at some middle relief type options, guys who can give them some versatility in that back end. And then I think they're also looking at one more starting pitcher. As far as who could that be, I would look at guys like Eduardo Rodriguez, Michael Lorenzen, that type of starting pitcher. Jack Flaherty type, high upside guys, somebody who they see something in their analytics department that they can really capitalize on. There was some rumors about them being connected to Lance Lynn before he moved on to the Dodgers. Maybe they, saw something just like the Dodgers did in Lance Lynn that they could correct. Think of something like that for the type of pitchers that are on the market right now for them to go after. But Bednar, as I said, around 26. If the Dodgers want to add to their bullpen, maybe they decide to go ahead and give up Sheehan as kind of the headliner of this package. His value has jumped up a little bit now, up to 22, while Bednar's has fallen. And then you're going to have to add another piece here. Stone was a little bit higher as well. He was around 17, 18. I don't know if they would do that type of a trade, though. Let's go a little bit lower. Let's go with Nastrini. That's a pretty good value as far as the package right there for Bednar. I still think it would take one more prospect to get it done, but the Dodgers would be able to add a guy like David Bednar to their bullpen He'd probably slot in as their either their closer or eighth inning guy with this type of a trade. Joe Kelly sliding into probably that seventh inning middle relief type of a role, and Phillips, of course, getting quite a bit of work as well with Bednar at the very back end of that bullpen. But this would be kind of the sell right now high on the Bednar contract. With the controllability of him going forward. Not a bad trade here, but I think it would still add, or they would still need to add a little bit more. All right, so we talked a little bit about some trade possibilities here as we kind of prepare for a busy day of trades here on a Sunday. Top 50 trade candidates according to the MLB Trade Rumors site anyway, as they've updated it now. Jordan Montgomery is tops on the list with Lucas Giolito off the board. I think Justin Verlander's got to be high on this list as well. No, I have not looked at this list with you, so I'm kind of looking at it with you guys for the first time. Looks like the guys at the very top here look like guys that are very likely to move. Offensive pieces here at the deadline are few and far between, which is why I think the Mets could capitalize if they decided to make Pete Alonso available. I think they could get a pretty penny for him because he immediately would probably be the top bat available here at the deadline. Because Cody Bellinger, I think, is going to be pulled back from the market by the Cubs. Jeimer Candelario, as I mentioned, probably one of the better hitters available on this year's market. 3, they've got Michael Lorenzen ahead of Eduardo Rodriguez. As far as total value, I think Rodriguez gets a better package, but I think Lorenzen is more of a surefire guy to be traded. It looks like they've really ranked this by guys that are very likely to be moved. Montgomery, Candelario, and Lorenzen, I would put at 100% likelihood of being traded for all 3. Pham, I'd put around 95% just because a team has to offer for that fourth outfielder type, and there's a lot of those guys available. Just because the sheer availability of the number of guys on the market for rental type bats, Pham could be one of the guys that might not get moved just because there's so many of them that are on the market. Jack Flaherty, another one that's very likely to move. Hicks, another one likely to be moved. Rodriguez sure will be moved. Carlson, I think, is the first guy on this list that may or may not be moved. It's going to take a little bit more to trade him. Teams like the New York Yankees have been connected to him along with the Dodgers. I think this would be the perfect fit for the Yankees, just a matter of are they willing to pony up the price to be able to get him. And I don't think it's a finishing move for the Yankees either. I think they'd still have to add to that rotation and to that bullpen. But Carlson, I think, would be a great fit for the New York Yankees. Think of the Bader addition last year for the Yankees. Really kind of helped them out more than I thought he actually would. Found a little bit more power than he ever had with the St. Louis Cardinals. Carlson, maybe it's just going to New York might help him out as well, but we shall see. Barlow, another guy that is very likely to move for the Royals. Royals don't really have much of anything going their way right now. Injuries, regression, really this rebuild process has not worked well for the Royals. They need to get some prospects in that system, young prospects, lottery ticket type prospects that they can really build with. Barlow has been mentioned as a fit for the Yankees. I think the Rays have also been connected with Barlow as well. His walk rate is a little bit higher, but he does offer a decent strikeout rate. Canna, another corner outfield bat that's been connected to the LA Dodgers. I expect him to be moved before a guy like Tommy Pham. DeYoung is another guy. The Cardinals have been said that they're going to move out of their system. They want to get some of their young guys up. They have a shortstop that's ready to take over some reps there. I think he is going to be moved. Chris Stratton, I think, is a perfect fit for the Rangers right now. The familiarity he has pitching for Bruce Bochy as well, I think, is another guy that could be moved to kind of be a middle reliever for the Rangers. So Cardinals, as I mentioned, have a lot of pieces that are available here at the deadline. Welcome back, John. Appreciate you for joining us on an early Sunday morning. It's only 9:37 Central Time. I know you guys on the West Coast. It's not even 8 o'clock in the morning yet, so we appreciate you guys joining us. With our farm system talent up the middle, which team would be a great target for the Rangers? Well, what he's referring to there is the Rangers have a whole bunch of middle infield options like Luis Angel Acuna that they could move here at the deadline. That was one of the pieces that they spent in order to bring in some starting pitching. I think Justin Foscue is another one that they could move here at the deadline. I think there's an outside chance they move a guy off of their major league roster in Ezekiel Duran for a superstar blockbuster level trade. We're talking about a Luis Robert type trade. I don't think it's coming. Let's slow down there, but the Rangers have that availability here at the deadline if they wanted to make something like that happen. Corbin Burns, we mentioned him as a possible trade possibility for the last couple of days. I think Ezekiel Duran would be the headliner going back to Milwaukee if that were to happen. As for which teams could be a target for some of our minor league infielders, I think Milwaukee would probably be first on that list. I would look at teams like the Mets, who need some youth in that team. Would be another fit for them. But the one that I don't think would be a fit would be the Cincinnati Reds. They have so much middle infield and corner infield talent. They don't need it. I think the Mariners could use some of that talent as well. Not sure what the Mariners really have to trade that the Rangers would be interested in, aside from Seawald. But I think Foskey's value is a little bit too high right now for just the closer, Seawald. They'd probably have to get another piece back in addition to that. And I just don't see a fit quite there. Maybe for a lesser prospect could be a fit. But that's kind of where I see the middle infield talent for the Rangers prospects possibly being a fit for a trade here at the deadline. Continuing on this list, speaking of the Mariners and Paul Sewald, there he is at number 13 on the list here. He has another year left to control, a 2.93 ERA, striking out over 35% of batters. That's a pretty good rate there, and he's getting some whiffs at those as well. So he's missing a lot of bats. He's not just getting them looking. But we shall see. Sounds like the M's are at least open to offers, according to Joel Sherman of the New York Post. Blake Snell and Josh Hader, they've got them grouped here together. I think the only way they sell either of those pieces right now is if they lose today, tomorrow, before the deadline. And even then, I just don't think Preller wants to give up on this season. He's got a couple of great pitching performances the last couple of nights out of Joe Musgrove and Yu Darvish, and that's not including the best pitcher for them over the last couple of months in Blake Snell. I'm curious to see what they ultimately decide to do. I think they're going to stand pat, but Josh Hader could be the top relief option on the market. They might do a little bit of buying and selling with Hader to see if they can get some value back. But for me, if I'm Preller, and Preller by himself, I think is going to stand pat here at the deadline. 16, Teoscar Hernandez. I don't think he's had a good enough year to really to be traded here at the deadline. He's got he's a good outfield bat. He's going to be kind of a third, fourth outfielder type right now. He's really lost a lot of value after the trade from the Jays. I just don't think he's had a good enough year to be moved here at the deadline. So I don't think teams are going to buy him at the deadline. Seth Lugo, a piece that could be moved, kind of a middle relief option, setup relief option for the Padres. Again, I just don't think they're going to sell here at the deadline. Middleton is the last relief pitcher I expect to be moved for the White Sox. No shortage of teams are interested in him. He's had a nice, rebound of a season for him. He's struggled a little bit over the last, week or so, but strikeout rate's good. And outside of a couple of rough outings, he's looked very strong all year. So a good middle relief, maybe a setup guy, when you need to give other guys a day off. Middleton could be a nice add for any bullpen out there. He's not going to cost you a whole lot as far as prospect capital. Probably a top 20, 25 prospect and maybe a lottery ticket would be able to get the job done for the White Sox. Then you get to the Rockies guys. Grichuk, Crone, Suter, Hand. All of those guys, not going to cost you a whole bunch either. You're going to be talking about maybe a top 20, maybe a top 30 prospect, but not much more than that. Crone seemed to be a fit for the Milwaukee Brewers. They decided to go with the Carlos Santana trade route instead. The Rangers are said to be needing a DH here at the deadline. Maybe Crone could be a fit for that. Bullpen, of course, every team could use something. Maybe Suter and Hand could be middle relief options for teams out there as well. But you're not going to command a whole lot. Rockies are struggling. They had 4 guys just go for Tommy John. I said 4. 4 guys go for Tommy John surgery right now. So we shall see who ultimately gets moved from the Rockies organization. But it's not going to cost you anything serious in order to get them. Brooks Raley's having a great year for the Mets. He's got an ERA at 2.43. He's got an option for next year as well. The one thing for him, though, is he's going to go for a team that's willing to, live with the walks he gives you. He had a great ERA up until the last few weeks, but the walks are certainly starting to catch up to him. The rest of it, though, his contract looks good. He's not going to cost you a whole lot. He's had a decent year, and lefties are in demand right now on the market. So he's going to go, I believe, here at the deadline. It's just a matter of what exactly he's going to go for. Tim Anderson finally hit his first home run in over 400 plate appearances, or 346 plate appearances anyway. Having a big time down year for him. But he's going to be a free agent, I believe, after next season because I think he's got a club year, or a club option year left. He could be a fit for teams that need some middle of the order or middle of the diamond production. He could play some second base. He could play some shortstop. We saw him play second base in the World Baseball Classic. A couple of teams have already reached out about his availability. It's going to be a question of what the White Sox want back for him. I mean, the White Sox, of course, could have him back next year and just do this all over again when he's having a better platform year. But I'm just not sure Anderson moves, at least right now. Gallegos is one of the guys on the Cardinals I think could actually stay with the team just because he's got some control left on his deal. He's 31, 3.77 ERA, so he's had a decent year, not a great year. Walk rate's really good, though. Strikeout rate is pretty decent, 43 innings. Could he go in a bigger package? I suppose, but I don't think the Cardinals really have to move a guy like Gallegos right now. They've invested so much in him. I'm just not sure he's the guy to go. I think they're going to be looking to move a lot of other people before they get to Giovanni Gallegos. They've got a lot of work to take care of as far as moving, contracts off of the roster like Montgomery, Flaherty, Hicks, O'Neill, etc. I'm just not sure Gallegos ultimately gets moved. Blackburn could be a depth starter for a team out there. I'm just not sure he's a great fit for anybody right now, aside from maybe an innings-eating type of pitcher right now. Low-cost option for a starting pitcher, so teams that are cash-strapped or right up against the tax could turn to Blackburn. A's are willing to deal him if you're willing to give him a bag of potato chips. I'll put it that way. Then you talk about the Mets guys. Scherzer's already moved. Verlander, we talked about him. The Mets are willing to pay down quite a bit of salary in order to get a decent prospect back. They got a really good prospect for eating $36 million of the Scherzer deal. So if they're willing to do something similar for Verlander, they could get another top 100 prospect back for him. Then you get to the Cubs guys. Again, I just don't think they're going to sell after their win streak right now. And I think Bellinger and Stroman both end up staying. The Tigers bullpen guys, Cisnero and Shreve, neither of them are going to break the bank for you guys if you're needing, a middle relief option here. I just don't think either of them are really going to, entice anybody to give up a top 30 prospect. I think you're looking at a sheer lottery ticket type of move here. Sorry, Tigers fans. I know you're hoping to get, some, high quality prospects back, but they're decent relievers, but they're not going to, they're not anybody that moves the needle for a contender. They maybe give them some, veteran, like for instance, the Rangers right now, they're looking for bullpen help. They're looking for veterans. They might give you one of their, A-ball prospects who's not in their top 30. That might be the best type of return the Tigers could hope for either of those pieces. Rich Hill could be moved here at the deadline. He's had a decent year, 4.82 ERA, a decent strikeout rate, but the thing for him is that he's going to be really good in the locker room. He's going to, if you get him in a rotation where he can be every sixth day in a six-man type of rotation, I think he'd be a little bit better as far as his performances. But he's on the very end of the back nine of his career. We're talking about hole number 18 for him. So, maybe he just wants to go to a contender and could be a number 5, 6 type starter for them as they try to wind down the season. Quintana could be available, although he's missed a lot of time this year. He just made his return back to the majors. Then you get into, really rebuilding teams here, like the Royals, Tigers, Nationals, all with middle relief options. Tigers, Lang, I don't think you're going to move him just because I think he's got too much control left on his deal. Bummer, it sounds like the White Sox want to hold on to at least one piece in that bullpen, and Bummer seems to be the guy they want to hang on to. But I think if you overwhelm him for Bummer, who's had a decent year, I take that back. He's had a good year for the White Sox. It would cost you probably a top 15, top 20 prospect because they really want to hold on to Bummer. As far as Finnegan, I think he could be had for a little bit more than a bag of potato chips, but not too much more. Nationals are not exactly contenders right now. Finnegan's not going to be around for the next title team. So if you give him a decent offer, I think the Nationals would accept. Then you get into the Mets guys here. Carrasco, he's got a lot of money left on this deal. Hasn't been playing very well. I don't think he's likely to move here at the deadline. Too much money and not enough performance. Ottavino, I think, could be had here at the deadline. It's going to be about whether or not Ottavino would be a fit on the teams he goes to. He seems to prefer going to the Northeast. So I just wonder if, just that mindset, that Northeast mentality, if he wants to go anywhere else, Maybe the Phillies could be a fit there. They need some bullpen help. He's got a year left on his deal as well. Maybe he goes back to the Yankees as kind of a seventh, eighth inning option here. But a trade between the Mets and Yankees, I'd put those chances at very slim. So then you get into the Lane Thomas. I think he's really boosted his value this year. I just think he might have boosted it too high for the Nationals in order to trade him, because I think the Nationals view him in one light. I think outside teams are going to look at the regression that he's had over the last couple of months from that great start that he got off to and say, hey, what exactly are we getting if we get a guy like Lane Thomas? Kind of a breakout year for him, but he's certainly started to struggle as of late. Another guy from the Rockies who's kind of due for some regression, the All-Star Game MVP, etc., but hitting 270, the Rangers need some catching help. Rockies are indeed selling right now. As I mentioned, they just put 4 guys on the. They just had 4 guys literally go for Tommy John literally on the same day, and could they move Diaz? Sure. I'm not sure they're going to get what they want for him, so I think he probably stays as well. Savali could be moved for some offense. Not sure if they'll do that as well. I think the Guardians ultimately stand pat for the most part with what they've got. They might tinker around the edges, but I don't think they're going to move a guy like Savali. Bart, I just don't think he's got enough value on the open market, and I don't think Bart ends up moving for the Cubs. I don't think they're going to sell pieces, so Leiter and Fulmer I think ultimately stay. India for the Reds was the one piece that they could move for a starting pitcher, so I think his inclusion on this list is actually a pretty good bet. Do I think it's likely that he's moved? Probably not. I'd put his trade possibilities around 30%. I think the only way they move him is probably in a deal for a controllable starting pitcher, like a Logan Gilbert, a Mitch Keller, something like that. We talked a lot about Adam Duvall already. He had a great April, looked like an MVP type candidate in April for the first 8 games, then had that horrible injury and has not been the same hitter since. Could he go? I believe so. The Phillies are reaching out. I know we had a Phillies fan in here asking about what the Phillies are going to do. Warren, they've been connected recently with Adam Duvall. He's finished the last couple of years with the Atlanta Braves. He's been connected to there as well. Seems like he's ticketed for a trade to the NL East. We'll see who ultimately gets him, but I think the Phillies might be the odds-on favorite right now to get him just because their need for a corner outfield bat, while the Braves might just feel the comfortability with him, bringing him in and kind of rounding out that roster. Then you get to the long shot options here of trade possibilities with the Pittsburgh Pirates in David Bednar and Mitch Keller. David Bednar, I think, is probably the more likely of the two to go, just because I think the Pirates need some starting pitching. Keller's had a good, not great year. Bednar's had a great year and would probably be the top option on the relief market outside of maybe Josh Hader. With the controllability of his contract, I think that kind of pushes his value a little bit higher as far as what the cost could be for him if the Padres did decide to put Hader on the market. So it's going to cost a pretty penny to get him. But I think Bednar, there's an outside chance teams that are literally all in, like the Texas Rangers, could be in on that type of a reliever. So just a matter of what the Pirates are really wanting back in that type of a trade. But let us know in the comments section. What do you guys say happens here at the deadline? Been live with you guys for about an hour here. About to go ahead and call it here in just a moment. But again, we'll be live for you guys later this evening. Let us know in the comments section. Let us know in the comments on our videos when we post them later on today as we get some trade possibilities out there. As we get more rumors, we'll put out some content for you guys. So make sure you hit that like button on this video, hit the subscribe button, and join us again this evening at 8:30. Programming note for the trade deadline. We'll be live for you guys all day long on Tuesday, starting at 8 a.m., going through the deadline, probably till about 6:30, 7 o'clock after the deadline, breaking down every single deal. So make sure you get a drink. Make sure you get all your snacks ready. It's going to be a very fun afternoon today, tomorrow, and Tuesday. Appreciate all the support we've gained from you guys. I know you guys bear with us with our technical difficulties that we had last night, so appreciate you guys joining us once again. And as I mentioned, tonight we'll be live with you guys again at 8:30, and then Tuesday all day for the trade deadline. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you later on this evening.